Miguel, the floor is yours.
Mr. Chair, we have 6 issues for resolution that we'd like to present this morning. The first, Resolution 08 FY 2025, is in relation to the work that we are conducting at the Hagåtña main sewage pump station. The original project was for redundant force main design. With the signing of the consent decree, one of the compliance requirements was to add as a priority project the pump station rehabilitation. The board previously authorized additional funding under this contract for the pump station assessment and an allowance for the design work. That has taken us to 60% complete on the design. And this additional funding request is to come now that the assessment has been completed, the full scope of design has now been identified, and additional funds are required to complete the design work, all the improvements necessary to bring the station up to standards set forth in the compliance requirements of the partial. So there was some additional contingency money that was left over, so the design completion and an allowance for services during construction has been included in the second change order proposal, number 2. So the additional cost that we are seeking is $245,000, and then an additional 10% contingency on top of that. So it would bring the authorized contract amount to $1.876 million, and then with the contingency, $2.064 million. So part of the reason
Somebody here? Okay.
Part of the reason that this is critical is there is a short fuse. As I mentioned, this is a priority project that was listed in the partial consent decree. So the requested funding also includes amounts for review of long lead equipment purchases that might be necessary. So that is included in this budget. We do anticipate that the design can be completed by January, and then construction procurement will begin once the design is complete. And this will be funded using EPA.
Is this a redundant line, right? In other words, or is this a redoing of an old line into a rehab?
So the original project was to provide redundant force main for the Hagåtña main pump station. So it would be to rehabilitate and provide a redundant. So the redundant force main was initially intended to be a permanent construction feature as a result of the. When we got the updated cost estimates back after the design had progressed on the force main, the option that was chosen for construction, which was the directional drilling, the cost had gone up so significantly that we had to pivot and provide a temporary force main across the causeway in order to keep the pump station operational, and then rehabilitation of the original one. And that was considered a more prudent investment, especially since doing that rehabilitation would coincide with what we anticipate the life of the plant would be for the remainder of the potential consent decree to upgrade Hagåtña to secondary or to relocate it. So providing a permanent redundant force main at a cost of $30 to $40 million if we're going to move the plant subsequently doesn't make a lot of. So we pivoted, and that's why we don't have a redundant. We will have a temporary redundancy only.
Okay. Question?
Okay, moving on, Resolution 09 FY 2025. This is relative to approving for the Atacao water and sewer infrastructure project, the construction and project management services. As the board is aware, this is the project for which we did receive some ARPA funding. We proceeded with the design as part of our septic tank and cesspool elimination program. So this will provide additional expanded sewer lines in the Atacao area, which currently is lacking that infrastructure. And as a result of that, the septic tanks in the area have caused an increasing level of nitrates in several high-value production wells in this area. So it allows us to protect the wellheads and also to expand sewer collection system in this area. So we had already issued a design project, which is completed. We are now ready to move to construction, and the construction management services for this are what we are presenting to the board for approval. The RFP for construction management and project management services was put out. We received 4 responses from 4 different engineering firms. PhD was selected as the most qualified for the project. Their negotiated fee proposal for construction management service on this project is 0.14.
Everybody wants us to extend the sewer. I don't think they get how expensive this stuff is. Your design, this contract is for $2 million?
Just for the construction management and project management services.
Alone.
Yeah.
How much is the? This is just CM, right?
That's the next proposal,
That's what
the next resolution.
That next. Okay. Questions? Yeah. All stuff we need to do.
The next resolution is 10 FY 2025. Again, this is related to Atacao Water and Sewer Infrastructure Project. This is for the construction of the project. The number of bidders on this, once we put the design out, was there were 2 bidders, and then the lowest bid was, I think, base bid was 4.2 million. Yes, Rhino Construction, and they 4.49 million, and they once we engaged the design engineer to confirm their submission and their bid, they subsequently realized that they had severely underbid the pump station work, both in equipment and the construction costs for the wet well. So they withdrew their bid, and the second bidder was more in line with, I think, our estimates, came in at 6.2 million. So we are seeking approval of their base bid amount, a 25% contingency of 1.2 million, for a total of 7.4 million. This will be funded with a combination of the original ARPA grant funds that were provided by the governor for this area, augmented by grant funds which were approved for the project.
You said 3 bidders, I only see 2.
I'm sorry,
Oh, 2.
I misspoke.
Okay.
I said 2.
Remember tomorrow about 11.
Yeah, no. It's very bad. The mind is not as good as it used to be.
The design.
You're in good company.
The design for this pump station incorporated our best estimates for the area that is being served for full development, but also adjacent areas.
Okay, that's
Partial
what I
and
wanted to
partial.
know. Can this be expanded? In other words, this is like a building block. So you're putting in the pump stations and the initial things. Can we build off of this?
Yes, there is additional capacity built into the infrastructure.
So, Miguel, you put in the main lines.
So, at the time that we proposed this, there was a thought that while we're doing it, we would reach out to existing homes that are in the area and have a provision for them to connect using our contractor, but they would have to contribute to the cost. So that was our proposal. I think we had built some of that into the bid package as alternate bids. At this point, we're only seeking the base bid with this amount. As we move forward and execute the project, if there is additional work that would be required on our part to facilitate the connection of these homes, we might for that. But I think we have the capability in the contracting documents and with what we put out in the bid for that kind of public-private partnership to get the existing homes connected.
The you put the infrastructure. Does it any higher than, or is it infrastructure's there and it's not actually utilized until they connect?
On the wastewater side, it's all brand new, so there are no existing capacity issues. On the water side, there is capacity issues because they're served only by 2-inch service lines. So we're changing those out and upsizing to 6-inch mains.
So until
8 and 6-inch mains.
so that infrastructure doesn't actually get used until people make the financial. But that's a mandate. Are they do they have to?
If they're
Isn't
within,
there a-
once it's in, and they are within 200 feet, they are required. We don't have the enforcement
New
authority,
construction or existing?
both.
Alan Boone has the enforcement authority.
Guam EPA has the enforcement authority.
Up to Guam EPA.
But nobody's really taken advantage of it.
We sent that to the legislature and the AG's office.
We sent it to the agency.
And then, I mean, all good stuff. So, and then assuming the legislature approves, then we would do an outreach with the loan program, because I was thinking about it.
So we have done some outreach in the design stage so that the community knows it's coming. We've asked for assistance in locating their septic tank so we could figure out the scope to connect them.
Yeah.
So they know it's coming, but we have not yet reached out in regards to the sewer loan revolving fund. But we will,
At least we have that.
absolutely. And we have all the contact information and all of that already set up.
And then at this point, subject could change, but the new hospital is slated to be this corridor leads from the front door where a location is. In work that UK and GWA did with the matrix study that looked where to put hospitals, even though they said EPOW, they used this. I'm working with Senator Estevez at Kura, right? And they're trying to figure out their piece of the puzzle, right? Because they're the land person right now. People not agreeing with them, but anyway, the governor's pushing there. So, but I like the fact this. If the hospital were put here, there's a corridor that I guess starts in our front door and heads north. And Senator Estevez is saying, and we provided, both utilities provided information that was put into the matrix. The estimate, infrastructure, upgrading water, sewer lines to serve that hospital. So, not directly related to this, but yesterday he asked me, is that number still good? Which I'll just talk with you and John. What I think I'm hearing, and if I'm not, if the new hospital were put up here, that's bringing infrastructure to this region. We would have a customer, the hospital, but kind of like what Commissioner Limtiaco was alluding to, but now you have infrastructure. So you can get developers who own land around here and say, hey, I can build some housing and connect to the infrastructure that the hospital is being served. Atticow's just further up, right? So this, and it seems to me we're doing the same thing here. We're upgrading the ability for that corridor of land, and which may not have users today, but it's sort of chicken and the egg, right? once you put it up there, it's easier for developers to say, I'm not running 10 miles to the nearest sewer line, I'm running 1 mile to the nearest sewer line. And at least I'm envisioning, just speaking, and then always appreciate how you look at it. You now have infrastructure going down this corridor from us towards GWA, new hospital, arguably, and then the Atacao piece is a little further north, right? But we're beginning to bring infrastructure into the area, which I think, that's my thinking, Commissioner Lamtiaco, is, okay, now developers can say, hey, I'm not running the Barragata for the nearest sewer line. We have customers beginning to emerge in this corridor land near the largest villages on Guam, and with the anchor tenant being initially the hospital, Atacao sounds like another upgrade in this region, right? And I like the fact that starting to plant infrastructure seeds up here that is near large populations, that maybe we will get more customers that will hook up to the hospital line, hook up to the Atacao upgrades, and so that's why I kind of like this project, because it sounds to me an expansion of the concept that this part of the island can get some basic infrastructure in the future. Am I talking about the right region? Hospital is
So
right. Atacao's further north, right?
it is,
Right.
and the proposed, the information that you're citing that was in the matrix report, GWA provided cost estimates for the site as it was envisioned at Eagles Field, with the capacities for all the different facilities that were planned into that. But the discharge for the sewer requirements, the discharge, because it's closer to that side of the hill, the costs proposed a meant back the Lalo Barragata area, which would bypass the Manila pump station and result in city grades only downstream. So that was what was proposed. Because the property, as I understand it, is now shifting a little bit to the north, it's more in the valley. Pump station will definitely be required on the hospital development, and then we're working right now to try to figure out how that would change the cost estimates. But presumably, there is the option of pushing that way towards Atacao, and there is sufficient capacity in the current design to accommodate those flows. Or it could go back this way towards Route 10, which would then require subsequent upgrades, potentially some of the lines. However, both of those pump stations are on the tiered list that are where rehabilitation is required under the consent decree, so those will happen. I'm not sure yet how the timing might work out, but additional capacity to handle this type of development would certainly be worked into the project for the partial consent decree. Minimal impact.
Does a hospital developer charge system development?
Yes.
Good. But I mean, at least it sounds to me that this corridor of historically raw land, other than which then we built Fidea, is I like direction it's sounding like. Sounds like we may have a customer called a hospital in this region, right? North, but I like the we're opening up, putting in the basic infrastructure, and then, like Commissioner, assuming and believing that there will be begin to help us pay for this infrastructure, but at least some like the Atacao work is all grant.
Yes.
So that little piece is overall. I was like the idea that this side of the island expanded development.
And it,
This is a major anchor tenant, and hopefully housing, especially when we're closest to the 3 largest villages on Guam.
you're pointing out some important planning activities that should take. Given the timing and pace of the consent decree projects, it's important that we kind of nail down some of this planning now. So in as much as GWA can assist to get that identified and work it into its plans to avoid complications subsequently during the execution of these projects, we hope the board is in approval of us moving in that direction.
I think we are.
Okay.
Do you have any questions?
No, I was just looking at the map, and I'm just like looking at the challenges of getting the laterals right to that main line. So there's a lot of homes which could make it potentially per unit a little bit less expensive, but you know, I'm familiar with. The resolution addresses the impact to the reservoirs, right? If you put in the main line, but when will you actually, hit your goal of impact?
Right, you're talking about protecting the NGLA, yeah.
Yeah, so,
Well, the construction period is around 800 days, a couple years to get it completely built, and we've got first half of that time to try and get some of these loan applicants.
will the construction be planned like at most where those
Yes.
laterals will run? So there'll be a place that, knowing, okay, the lateral would probably come here, so hook up to that somewhere like a,
That was the reason for the public outreach, to locate their septic tank, so that when the design project went through, we knew where to properly place potential connection points to existing customers.
okay. And then the other question is on the prior resolution for the construction management, that also takes into consideration actually that's the design side, right? Not the
No,
construction.
it's it is the construction management and project management side.
Okay, so that would be incorporated into figuring out how all these residents are,
Yeah, they would coordinate that.
okay.
I only have a couple questions. First up, or one question and one point. When you do the outreach, the picture to the people out there that says, look, you're required to do this. This guy has a hammer. We're trying to help you. Some funding for you, maybe we have these programs for you. But trying to put the whole education thing out, public outreach out on both. I think both are very key, Guam EPA and GWA. The second thing I wanted to say is, one of the things that I think I always struggle with is when we're going to put in infrastructure, we're getting money from either ARPA, EPA funds. Those are all good. At the end of the day, when we put it in, we're going to have O&M costs. So you need to hook customers up to pay for that O&M cost. You put in a line and nobody hooks up. How are you going to pay for the O&M? So, that's the key. I'm a little nervous, and I'll tell you why. Because I think you might know this. I think the last thing or master plan for the island, Senator Salas?
I think you and I had more here, but it's been a while.
Yes, and that plan's sitting on somebody's shelf somewhere or buried in a closet somewhere. And I guess my point is, I really wish that the government, big government, would do its job of actually planning and saying, hey, you can build houses here, you can build warehouses here, and come out and, you know, the worst thing we can ever have again, another harm industry, where people are still building houses. I can't get over this. Building houses or apartment buildings next to cement batching here in Harmon Industrial Park. That should be a no-brainer. You don't want kids sitting at that bus stop. First off, one kid actually got hit by a dump truck once. Thank God it wasn't that serious, but you don't want children breathing in cement dust. There's a reason why a lot of these, you know, cement contractors and all these, they drive white trucks, so you won't see the cement dust. Don't drive brown trucks or gray trucks, they drive white trucks.
So in many ways, your wish is being executed by GWA in terms of, I mean, yeah, the master plan said we need housing, but the rubber's hitting the road.
Yeah,
here.
on our side.
And we've got federal and local funding. Good, we'll do the plan, we'll do construction, but, you know, so this corridor is gonna get some development, which maybe will help with other future headaches. So where the chicken and the egg, it looks like. You know, nothing
Anyway,
happens until we build
the-
it, but it's a great,
two things.
it really has the potential to open up.
No, it does, and, you know, I mean, one of the things we want is we want to get away from septic tanks over the northern aquifer. We just got to get away from it.
And then does EPA, so if Mr. Sanchez is within 249 feet, Mr. Sanchez, US EPA tell Mr. Sanchez, you must connect, we will order GWA to, even though they're current.
So
Have we looked at
if
that
you're
in
at-
bond covenants? and all
If
that
you're
stuff?
at 249,
Yeah.
we can. Because
EPA can
it's-
tell us to turn, if Mr. Sanchez doesn't connect, EPA can tell you
I
to turn
believe
off.
the law says 200 feet. So if you're at 249, you're just
Okay,
beyond.
sorry, Mr. Sanchez is at 199.
Yes, we can turn off the water.
And EPA can tell you to turn off the water,
I
even though
believe so.
Mr. Sanchez is current.
It's EPA's call. They
Yeah,
have.
so that's part of the education process, Mr. Sanchez, even though you're current,
Yeah,
EPA.
and
I mean,
that's why I said EPA and you have to get together on the outreach.
yeah, because I appreciate
So
the
people-
logic of it, right? I mean, what's the point of putting the sewer line, no one's gonna connect to it,
Yeah.
we're trying to protect we are trying to, this is the way you do it, but until you force Mr. Sanchez to connect.
So if it's 250, does it, as the lateral going down the street?
Yeah,
the
what
number
happens to
slowly
the
gets
further away?
or do we envision putting the lateral and the 250 from the homes?
That's an interesting question.
Well,
We're gonna think about
I don't know where the 200 number
Yeah.
came from. But the way we've done this is we've looked at the existing subdivision of lots for the properties that are there, and where there are right-of-ways and easements, that is where we've proposed to install the lines. So any lot on either side of the right-of-way is within the 200.
Now, what happens if?
But, you know, keep in mind that we're talking about the Atacol area, which is from Route 15 towards the Laddie Heights area, right? I don't, for this particular project, we're not on Route 15 going back this way, right? There will need to be future gravity lines and put in there, as we were discussing for the, right, it'd be a combination of force main up and down where gravity works, and then we would put gravity.
I'm just trying to get a feel from this, like looking at the map and the resolution and this, what percentage those impacting, you know, the reservoirs are you gonna get?
It is,
Okay.
As long as EPA uses the hammer, but are you gonna run it beyond 200 feet? If Mr. Cruz's house is at 225 feet, you would still, in a perfect world, we would run the laterals. I'm looking at the map too, like,
if it's,
there's some houses that are gonna be more than 200 feet away.
I think if it's, I can't speak to the specifics of your scenario, but to the greatest extent possible, when we went through the design, it was with the intention of getting everybody
in that region.
reasonably could connect it. And the 200 foot is what's in the law, but it wasn't we didn't tell the designer,
Good.
don't,
You're
don't
planning
stop
the
at
project the
200.
way you want it,
Right.
and then we'll figure out.
Okay. Okay, good. Next.
Very good.
Next is Resolution 11-FY 2025, and this, along with Resolution 12, are for a recent procurement for submersible pumps, cables, and splicing gels to make sure we have critical inventory for deep well pump and motor changeouts. As the bid came in, these resolutions were prepared based on the recommendations of the board. And so what you see in these two resolutions is as the original bids were submitted and our initial evaluation of that. And so this Resolution 11 is for JMI Edison, who was the successful bidder for submersible pumps and splicing gels with an annual amount of $297,000 for the estimated quantity of pumps and about $22,000 for the estimated quantity of splicing gels for a total annual estimate of $319,000. There's a 3-year base contract with 2 one-year options to extend for 1 year. And so that even with the 3-year base contract, that would put us close to $1 million. But we are seeking the funding amount for all 5 years on these projections, along with a standard contingency that would bring the total authorized funding to $1,700,000. And this, as I mentioned, 3-year base with 2 one-year options, and this would be revenue funded. For the procurement, there were 9 parties that downloaded the bid documents, but only 2 submitted. JMI Edison was awarded submersible pumps and splicing gels based on the initial bid. I will point out to the board that subsequent to these notices of award going out, there was a FOIA issued by one of the bidders, and a protest has been filed, which we are working to resolve. We anticipate, because this is critical to our ability to replenish, we are trying to resolve the protest quickly. Anticipate that the basis of the protest may change what is awarded in each individual contract, but we will still have 2 contracts to award. So we would like to proceed with discussing and presenting it with what we have, and then hopefully in the week's time remaining, if there are any changes based on the protest evaluation that is currently ongoing, we would make the modifications and come back with final numbers.
At the CC meeting.
Yes.
Okay, okay. Any questions?
There's a protest, but there's awards to both companies, right?
Yeah. So it's just,
They're still protesting, but each company had some awards.
yes.
Okay, moving right along. Now, so you just
We
covered
will say that
12.
based on the prior contract, where we had one supplier, the fact that we had 2 bidders this time, increased competition, despite the recent trend in increases in inflation, the bids were lower on, so there already is a cost benefit to GWA. And,
And that's because you
competition.
had more than one supplier. Now, I know you guys do IDIQs, but so the next subsequent year, both these bidders are going to be able to submit, or is this just awarded? Is a 5-year awarded based on individual award?
Looks like
The
it's
3-year base contract is awarded based on the bids that they've submitted already.
both of them.
Okay.
To both.
And then those options, does it come back down to the price bid again?
No,
Or no?
no price bid again, but there is a provision in the contract that if there are reasonable and allowable increases in cost, they can propose it, and we make the decision at that point whether we want to extend the option year or put it back out on the street.
So there's an acceptable escalation after the bid review committee reviews it, but if it's deemed not fair and reasonable, then you just put it out. You don't exercise the option.
We have the ability not to exercise the option, and the accept what we term as acceptable price increases, I think, has to conform with how it's defined in the procurement law.
Commissioner Sanchez.
And then yeah, and that applies to both bidders. I'm reading this. Got two bidders that have won this, agree with two options. The protest would deal with the allocation of these.
Yeah, so you'll notice, if you look at resolution number 12, and maybe we'll just make sense to do this and put them a little side by side. There were some submersible pumps that were awarded to Frontier, and then all of the submersible motors were awarded to Frontier based on their bid, and all of the submersible cables awarded to Frontier based on their bid. And they didn't get any splicing gels. So their estimated annual amount based on the quantities that we've provided is $444,000 per year, and a 3-year contract would be $1.3 million. And in both of these, because the potential exists for exceedance of the contract review protocol of 1 year, we are seeking approval to petition the PUC for their approval of these contracts under the contract review protocol.
And then if the protest emerges into
Essentially, the total amount will change marginally, but what will be more noticeable is there will be potentially a shift of some products from one vendor to the other vendor.
with the projects move forward, which is good.
That is our goal, is to make sure that it moves forward so that we maintain our critical inventory.
Okay, we've covered 11 and 12.
Yes, sir.
Okay, moving right along.
Moving right along, the next one is Resolution 13 FY 2025, and this is for an existing contract for wastewater treatment chemicals, which we have with JMI Edison. It is for a ratification of a small amount that we've gone over the authorized funding amount, and then seeking additional funding authorization for an additional 2 to 3 months of purchases under this existing contract. We do have two new procurements. We have new procurements out to provide for the replacement of this contract. However, we are trying to recognize some efficiencies in our treatment process, which uses these chemicals at multiple plants. And so we've put in a requirement for testing to optimize the dosage so that when we do the procurement, we're buying the optimized amount. And so that testing has added a little bit to the procurement time. We've just completed the period for the jar testing, and I think there's one more step in the procurement process. So hence the additional 2 to 3 months authorization, so we can get that procurement buttoned up and still have what we need to maintain operation of the plants in the meantime. So these are for anionic and cationic chemicals that will be used at the Northern District wastewater treatment plant, Hagatna and Agate Santa Rita wastewater treatment plants, and one chemical which will be used, the anionic will be used at only the Northern District and Agate Santa Rita plants. The amount of the ratification that we're seeking is about $19,000, and then we're seeking an estimated amount of $400,000 to cover us for the next 3 months until the procurement is complete. So this is all revenue funded. There is no bid. This is an existing contract. So we're seeking your approval for that amount. A touch
So
under
this is just an approval of a funding increase.
for an existing contract. That ratification of 19,000 that we went over, and then 400,000 for additional procurements.
As you prepare to put in the final bid or whatever.
Yes.
Questions? Okay. That's it for your decision?
That's it for the decisions. Does
Okay.
the board want a quick run through the
Yeah.
management report?
We always want to the emphasis is on the word quick, okay?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I'll shut up then. Actually, I'm gonna ask him a question on something I've never, when you get to the,
Okay.
let me dive into it now, so we
You
can
need to ask, just ask the question, it's okay.
Miguel, teach me something on, I'm looking at your reports are always very excellent summaries. So on the water production, October 2024, I think it's page 18 is what it says in the right
Yes.
column. Okay. So never thought about it this way, but so we pull out of the aquifer, subtract, except for Ugam, right? We pull out of the, is it, are we saying we're pulling out of the aquifers for now 36 million gallons a day? Is that the way to look at that chart on the upper left side of that page?
Yes.
Okay, and then we pull it out of the aquifer, the 1,174,000 kgals. Is that what we send to customers? Is that the way to look at that number?
That's
That's what you
total
built.
production, yes.
All right, so, and then I'm trying to do the math, and maybe I'm doing it wrong. If I move since it's 1,000 gallons, if I move the decimal point to the right, are we making 12 million we pull up 39, but we send out 12 million, 11.7 million gallons a day to our customers?
No, not a day. The K-gals is total for the month.
Oh, for the whole month.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
39, so if you take 39 times 31
Times
days in
30,
October,
that's how
then
you get it.
you should
Okay,
get it.
see, I knew you'd know the answer. Perfect. Okay, thank you. No,
Okay.
no. Anything else?
On that page, that's the production summary. We had 95 wells active through the month of October. 13 down for grounded motors or good for maintenance out of our 120. Moving on to the next slide on 19, just gives you the graphic output at on Maui, and we've hovered right around 1 million gallons a day, which is where we should be. No interruptions to service this month. On the water distribution side, we maintain 94.1% operability, down slightly from prior months, but still where we want to be. So all good there. On our water distribution tank levels, you can see in the south, we are hovering around 50%, which is right where we want to be for available storage. Keep in mind that we do have several tanks down in the south under the court order project for rehabilitation. So a significant portion of the southern community is getting their pressure via pumped pressure boosting right now until these reservoirs come back into service. On the northern side, with the disruptions that we've had to power supply, continue to face frequent pump and motor changeouts, and so our levels have declined a bit, and we've been working to try and reestablish that. We finished the month of October just upwards of 30% capacity, which is a little low. Working to improve that.
Are you billing John B. for the pumps and motors?
All of a sudden, I need to take the
He's
jacket.
got to take off his jacket. It's starting to get warm.
On the
You
waste,
have to ask, you have to ask.
I didn't
On
want him to take off his jacket, but
page
I didn't
22,
even get his temperature up.
on the wastewater collection side,
Must be a lot of pumps and motors.
again, in terms of pump station operability, we are not where we need to be, and there was a decline. We're at 80.6% operability for all of our pumps in our wastewater collection system. This needs to improve, and we had several issues. I reported another one in Agate pump station where the control panel has been affected, and so one of our employees stationed there to make sure everything is operating correctly until the repairs can be made, but it is an ongoing challenge.
Is the solutions part of your long-term CapEx, or do you think O&M we can tackle it a little sooner, or a little bit of both?
So part of it is on the O&M side is making sure we have sufficient parts, equipment, placements in our inventory. We have managed to get that where we need it to be in terms of treatment chemicals and deep well pumps and motors. We just spent all this time talking about the resolutions to help us continue to do that. On the wastewater side, it's a little bit more difficult. We've had a history of tending to, instead of replace, we've done a bunch of motor rewinds, and so we have several pump stations, rebuilt motors that we just need to get. Part of that is O&M. The other part of it is kind of outside of our control and relates to the ability to stabilize the have in the last couple of months worked with John Cruz at GPA to apply for, I believe it's a Department of Energy grant for microgrid. And it would, at certain critical GWA facilities, establish a microgrid which is capable of being completely isolated with storage battery that would, in addition to provide more reliable backup power, would also serve cleaner incoming power. And so that test, or that grant, is intended to kind of be a proof of concept. It works. We see different longevity of equipment locations, then it would serve as a long-term model, then we would build it into our campus.
And does GPA feel they can upgrade the system over time so that we?
So I can't speak, I can't speak to what,
Okay, you don't have to take a shirt off, but the jacket is good enough.
I believe that it's a combination of factors, and what we have seen and what our electricians have seen is that in many instances where we have our facilities on a circuit where there is a lot of residential also on the same circuit, that when connections are made or restored, single phase power is attached by connecting to one of the three-phase legs, but by the time it gets further down the line where our facilities are, there is imbalance between the three phases, and so we see that voltage imbalance show up on our sub-monitors in the station and the control panels. And that indicates to us that, you know, that prolonged imbalance has a negative effect on the pumps and motors, or the motors. So that is part of the issue. It's balancing the entire distribution system. So how that happens, for example, post-Mawar, you know, will get hooked back up, stuff gets replaced. Does it affect? It could. Is there an ongoing and comprehensive effort to fine-tune that? I think in most other utilities where such disruptions are few and far between, that's more of a realistic expectation. On Guam and with the different challenges that we have here, I think it's harder to get to that level. Does it mean it shouldn't be done? No, I think it should be done. I think everybody recognizes that. There just has been a lot of other issues that have prevented that type of fine-tuning and balancing of the distribution grid. And so, I think part of this grant project is intended to be able to gather the data of what the incoming looks like, evaluate a potential solution, and then that will give information and the analysis to drive your efforts.
So you mentioned your monitors, and you're seeing the voltage, one of the legs dropping, right? So is the system, does it have a fail-safe? It doesn't turn off? How long does it, almost instantaneous where that motor burns out, or is it, we don't have this ability to kind of turn it off and fix it?
The sub-monitors are there along with protective devices, so there are trips that happen. And then the other thing in my assessment that happens with the deep wells is if the motor trips out, again, there's an immediate shutdown, which is not a ramped down shut off, and it has a detrimental effect on the pump and the bearings. There are check valves installed, but there is still that happen. If that happens, it trips out. The voltage imbalance is corrected. We run it again, but then there's something else that happens and it trips again. Multiple occurrences. Something that I think our wells see here, whereas in other systems they don't see it. Why get manufacturers that don't understand necessarily why our pumps don't last as long as they do in other locations, and I think because of the conditions of service. So there are protective devices, and that's where we're getting the data. We didn't always have that, and we've done a better job at making sure that all of our facilities now are equipped with control panels, the VFDs, and the sub-monitors. What happens and what causes some of this.
Those protective devices, they're set so that once power is restored, it doesn't just automatically come on, which can cause like a hydraulic issue, right? Like a strain on your motors if it just turns back on instantly. It doesn't have like a reset period where it has a voltage monitor that assures stable voltage before it turns back on.
I think the way we have it set up is it trips and it requires a manual reset.
Manual reset.
Yeah. So that's why we have 24/7 rovers and the electricians are on call.
And you don't have remote visibility yet. You don't have.
No, not yet. I mean, we have some of these sites that have been rehabilitated are SCADA ready, but connecting them, backhauling them into the control centers.
That's our CI, in our CI. Oh, sorry, Mr. Chair.
Let's move on to wastewater treatment. Sorry, just one more thing on wastewater collection. Our CCTV and cleaning, we're a little bit behind schedule. We've had a couple of bad months trying to take care of other requirements in the partial consent decree that need to beef up on and get corrected. So we will have to make up time before the make up for some of the shortcomings in our cleaning, the total miles of cleaning and CCTV. On the wastewater treatment side, we generated and disposed of 1.2 million pounds of sludge at a cost of $113,000. Flows remain fairly stable, though in September and October you will see the pneumatic plant with increased levels just based on the rainfall in the south. Same thing with the gray bar and the blue bar on that graphic shows that we have had increased INI. As a result of that, the solids level, because of the increased INI, the solids level in Agate Santa Rita has been very low, and so there was no sludge. They're holding it to thicken it until we can properly run it through the centrifuges and dry it out. So there was no sludge disposed of from Agate Santa Rita last month. Moving on to asset management, our corrective maintenance to preventive maintenance work orders were at 24% corrective, 76% preventive, which is where we want to be. The completion ratio for that corrective maintenance, 91% of the work orders issued have been completed, 88% for preventive maintenance on completion. In terms of corrective maintenance for leaks versus equipment repair, 51% of the total work orders for corrective maintenance are for leaks and 49% are for equipment repair. Completion rates for leak, 99%, and for equipment repair, 91% completion on the work orders. Nothing really to report on the one Guam. There are a couple easements that we're seeking. One is near the Marble area, Marble South area, the former housing that's been turned into I think urban warfare training center. One of our sewer lines does come off of Marine Drive and kind of here because of the topography into that base. We're seeking an easement there, and it's still in process. And then for our PRV station installed here on Route 15, there was a slight encroachment into the Air Force property, so we're seeking an easement there that is still also in the approval process. We are still working with the Navy to evaluate PFAS treatment technologies. A pilot test is being planned, and we're still examining options on how we can jointly take advantage of that pilot testing to inform our design efforts for PFAS treatment island-wide.
What's the solution? What's the test?
That technology is surface air foam fractionation, so it's taking advantage of the natural, well, not the natural, but the manufactured properties of the PFAS compounds to foam up and using fine bubble diffusion to kind of foam it out of solution and then concentrate it. And so multiple steps of this process in multiple chambers allows you to essentially achieve concentration rates of in the hundreds of thousands So for every 100,000 gallons that you treat, you get 1 gallon that concentrated gas liquid. That is an easier disposal solution than tons and tons of granular activated carbon, which is why we're evaluated. So initial bench scale tests we're promising, and now we're moving on to the pilot scale testing of that.
Is the technology, is it cost prohibitive though, or is it something that is not too complicated and pricey to actually?
They have had containerized systems in operation in Australia for almost a decade, I believe. And it has been used primarily for water remediation as part of, but not necessarily for potable water use. They are just starting to, the same company that developed that technology, their US affiliate is just starting to seek all of the necessary approvals to get it kind of NSF certified and safe for potable water. It is effective for potable water, but their units are not yet kind of listed. All the component materials are listed, but the assembly as a whole is not yet listed. So they do have modular ones that are fairly cost effective. The problem is the capacity, the throughput is limited for some of our larger production wells. So we would end up having to use multiple units in parallel in order to maintain the same flow rates. So we're looking, if we are going to centralize treatment, we're looking at that technology, but on a custom designed and custom built system as opposed to modular units that are already rolling off the factory.
I'd like to see that.
The WEF conference, they had their full unit on display with treatment. So I have some material, but I've been wanting to see one actually in installation.
That's what they're going to do here on Guam.
Yeah, when it happens here, we can let you know. And if there are any kind of demonstration events, I will advise.
Can I invite Saipan to come watch?
I've,
Be looking for the same.
I've shared this information with the folks in Saipan already, but I have not yet told them about the potential pilot testing. So when the
When you
dates
get
firm
there.
up, yeah,
No, that's
absolutely.
perfect. That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
No change to the court order summary on 29. We are still tracking to complete all the projects by the 2025 deadline. We did have 6 SSOs to report in the month of October. You can see those listed on page 30. 3 or 4 up north and 2 in the south.
So
And
there'll be a new pie chart coming soon?
for the partial consent decree, we've not yet had to make one of the compliance reports for that, but we will figure out a way to summarize it once we do get that first report out. And then maybe the only thing to close with is the daily leak repairs. We have improved since the end of July and August, and we are now back to under 20 per day on backlog. Okay. Chris, you want to talk about receivables?
Active residential customer accounts receivable due greater than 60 days had another increase. So this is 4 straight months that number has increased. Last month it increased by about 71,000 and 124 accounts. We continue to ramp up the disconnections in hopes that it'll help alleviate those numbers and bring them down. Commercial did have an improvement. It lowered by about $11,000, but we did have 27 accounts increase on the commercial side. For customer service, just a few highlights. Active number of pay plans went up in October, which would make sense with the accounts receivable that we're still seeing there. 11.5% of our active meters are recording ongoing leaks, which is down a little bit from the previous month of 12%. Last month, and GPA celebrated National Customer Service Week in our other service centers, and Also completed a rotation with all our customer care reps and our field crew so that they can all access the different positions and tasks and be able to do all the different things in the rotation.
Jump into the PowerPoint, I wanted to just inform you about a couple of things. Our audit has been kicked off. We just had the recent entry conference with the OPA, and we're hoping to complete the audit sooner than last year, assuming that we get the required reports from the Retirement Fund and Department of Administration. We've begun the true-up process for the budget, we started the budget process. We did the, sorry.
On the audit side, I know that there's a lot of people exiting the market on who can do the audits. What is the current Guam capacity for who can perform the audits for the Guam? Is it still just one player?
There's currently two firms that do government audits in the local market, and I believe the OPA is going to be trying to reach out to firms that may not be that may not have local headquarters. But it is, part of the issue we've had is that with Deloitte exiting, E&Y's got almost all the audits, and it's making it very difficult for them to, I'm assuming that it's difficult for them to try to get all the audits done, given the staffing levels they have.
Auditors are reaching out to.
Yeah, you're right. So, is there any move to like relax some of the requirements? I mean, obviously, the commercial sector can perform private audits as well, right? I know there's some unique challenges to government audits, but do we know if the OPA or are we looking at the legislature to kind of relax some of the specific requirements that only bring the big?
The issue with the audits are for agencies that have federal grants, and those require that audits be completed by June 30. So I suppose that the legislature could waive some of the audit requirements, but that won't affect the federal government deadlines.
No, I'm not referring to the timeline, but is there when the solicitations come out, is there anything restricting large auditing firms?
No,
from
there's none. In fact, I think at one time, UOG issued an audit to a firm that wasn't a national firm. The difficulty becomes if they don't have a local presence, trying to get all the work done virtually.
This is a problem.
It's a headache.
It's even in the private sector. A lot of the private sector auditors, they're all retiring. And so
Right,
everybody's
yes.
scrambling, okay, who's going to do our audits,
Right, so
Just tell the banks to trust our financials. As long as the checks don't bounce every month. What do you care?
one of the issues that we're having is the University of Guam has a entrance exam for accountants that I think is creating a barrier to additional accounting graduates. And so the Guam Board of Accountancy and the Guam Society of CPAs have both been trying to work with UOG on getting that tests either removed or changed to something that's more practical. And, we continue to look at ways to help improve the supply of accountants. But, with the risk, I guess, in businesses, that's kind of one of the issues in getting firms interested. And, audits have been commoditized, so the cost of the audit, it's not the profit in doing an audit isn't high like it would be if you're doing consulting work. But, yeah. Sorry.
Sorry.
And then we did have a budget, the budget call go out in October, and we're hoping to get the true up, the budget that we'll be using in the true up to the board the first quarter of next calendar year. The true up might be a little more complicated this time because we will be including the rate design changes that were approved. So that should be kind of an interesting discussion with the CCU. And then I just wanted to also call out that we do have our new underwriters in place, RBC, who's the current underwriter, and Raymond James. As you might recall, Citibank pulled out of the market. GITA did issue the short-term financing RFP, and that should close at the end of the month. I'm sorry, the end of the week.
Oh, good, so we'll see potential bidders. Good.
Yeah.
Still need to interview and select out of the pool of respondents.
When do you see us in calendar year 25?
We're using commercial paper.
We hope to be using commercial paper
First, right,
First.
okay.
If the timing doesn't work out, engineering is getting a little bit nervous. We do have the bond authorization and the flexibility to issue a bond if we need to, but we're working really hard to try and get the commercial paper
Yeah,
program
that
established.
lowers the rate demand, or rate.
Financing cost, yeah.
Good.
So, anything else? That's it?
And then the typical statistics are included in your packet. I'm happy to go through them or not as the board desires.
If we have any questions, then Tuesday.
Okay, sure.
Well,
We would remind the board that council has asked for an executive session.
yes, so,
Oh, okay.
The last question, are there any, is this the entirety of the resolution, so no other resolutions for our normally, regularly scheduled meeting? for
There
next
might be
week?
one addition.
One addition, okay.
This is the
that's the
bulk
one
of it.
that you said you're working on.
I'm always working, sir.
Put your jacket back on.
Wait, took his jacket off.
Okay,
So we're gonna.
yeah, I need a motion to rise up and go into executive session.
Mr. Chair, I move to rise out of regular session and move into executive session on the advice of council.
Second, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. to adjourn?
Here, Mr. Chairman. Do we need a date specific or?
No. This is adjourned.
It's just a working session.
Perfect. Well, that's right, this is the one.
Second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it.
We're
We are
in
adjourned.
Okay, and then these,